Sometimes people disappear as if they never existed. In the heart of Yellowstone, among hot springs, icy rivers, and remote trails, things happen that defy logical explanation. Poets dissolve in boiling water, experienced hikers leave their weapons on the shore and walk into an icy stream for no apparent reason, and young people fall into rivers and disappear without a trace. In this issue, we have collected 4 real stories in which nature, or something beyond it, behaves as if it knows more than we do. In the summer of 2022, Yellowstone once again became the scene of one of the darkest and most inexplicable stories in its modern history. On August 16th, a human fragment, a foot in a shoe, was discovered in the Abyss Pool geothermal basin in West Terrace Basin, floating on the surface of murky, superheated water. A park ranger conducting a routine inspection of the area noticed the unusual object amid the clouds of steam. This turned out to be the beginning of a strange and still not fully understood investigation. A few days later, DNA analysis determined that the remains belonged to Ilhoun Rowe, a 70-year-old man from Los Angeles, California. His name had not previously appeared on any missing persons lists in the county, and it was only a check of the vehicle registration database that led investigators to a gray Kia Niro parked in a remote area. It was parked at a service road that regular tourists do not use. There were no tents or signs of recent activity nearby. The car was locked, but the keys were under the mat. Inside were neatly folded clothes, water, food, a laptop, a wallet with $400 in cash, and a thin notebook filled with handwritten poetry, which the family later identified as Rowe's own work. The notes were in English and Korean, and according to experts, some of the poems were disturbing, contemplative, and farewell in nature. It later emerged that Rowe had arrived in Yellowstone on July 30th. He had a week-long pass, but no official hotel or campsite registration was found. He was last seen on surveillance cameras at the entrance to West Yellowstone early in the morning of July 31st. From that moment on, there were no transactions, no phone calls, no digital activity. The body has not been found. Apart from a footprint in a sneaker and charred fragments of fat that later floated to the surface, no other body parts have been found, despite the fact that Abyss Pool is a geothermal observation site with periodic measurements of water temperature and composition. The water temperature in Abyss Pool ranges from 140 degrees Fahrenheit to 167 degrees Fahrenheit. This is enough to destroy soft body tissue over time, but as geologists point out, the complete disappearance of even bones in such a short period of time remains extremely unlikely. Dr. Manny Lewis, a geothermal expert, expressed his bewilderment. Even if the body had been in the spring for several hours, there should have been at least some fragments left, bones, hair, teeth, but there was nothing. It's as if the person simply disappeared, dissolved like steam. And that's just the beginning of the list of oddities. Despite the fact that the incident allegedly occurred during one of the busiest tourist months of the year, none of the witnesses reported any screams, splashes, or signs of an accident near the spring. This is despite the fact that the pool is in an open area and is usually surrounded by visitors. The condition of Rowe's car was no less strange. The car was found more than a mile away from Abyss Pool, in a remote area with no tourist trails. Dense vegetation and steep terrain make the route extremely difficult, especially for an elderly person without special equipment. How did he get there? And why did he park his car so far from the official routes? In addition, the interior of the car was in perfect order. There were no signs of haste, no scattered belongings, no chaos that usually accompanies stories of disappearances. Even the cap on the water bottle was carefully screwed on. It seemed that he had no intention of leaving, at least not forever. Finally, the weather conditions on the night before his presumed death only added to the concern. 2 rangers working in the West Thumb Geyser Basin reported a thick, abnormal fog that literally hung over the ground. It was unusually quiet that night, so much so that, according to one of the rangers, even the birds fell silent. He added, "We felt uneasy. We didn't go there." The most sinister detail is the last entry in Rowe's poetry notebook. The last page had been torn out and was long considered lost. It was found by chance a few days later, charred and half buried in the sand about 1,300 feet from the hot spring. It contained only one sentence: "I came here to find silence, but there is something louder than my thoughts." What exactly Roe meant remains a mystery. The investigation officially ruled the incident a tragic accident, a fall into a hot spring, the body destroyed by the temperature and acidic environment. However, this does not satisfy many experts in the family of the deceased. Some independent researchers believe that Roe may have been the victim of a rare mental disorder known as tourist syndrome, in which a person experiences an irresistible urge to dissolve into nature. Others note an unusual coincidence. This is the third death in the West Terraces pools in the last 25 years, and each time there were no witnesses. Yellowstone officials are urging caution and emphasizing that geothermal areas are not only natural wonders, but also areas of increased danger. However, questions remain. What prompted a 70-year-old poet from Los Angeles to venture alone to one of the most dangerous areas of the park? What happened between 6:15 and 8 a.m. on July 31st, when Roe last appeared on camera and disappeared? The case remains unsolved. No remains have been found, no motive has been established, and the chain of logic has been broken. All that remains of Roe are his shoes, a few photographs, some poems, and a hot, hissing spring. At dawn on June 16, 2018, in the small town of Riv Point, Montana, 20-year-old Brandon Fitch disappeared under strange and still unexplained circumstances. He was last seen on the bridge over the Yellowstone River, a popular but unofficial hangout for local youth. According to his friends, it all happened in a matter of seconds. Brandon allegedly slipped, lost his footing, and fell into the water. The current was particularly strong at the time due to heavy rain, and within seconds, the young man disappeared under the water. One of the eyewitnesses immediately dialed 911, and rescue services arrived at the scene within half an hour. Water patrols, boats with echo sounders, drones, volunteers, and dog handlers were dispatched to the scene. But despite the quick response and coordinated efforts, there was no sign of Brandon. No clothes, no body, no clues on the shore. Even his phone, watch, and metal buckle, which should have floated or caught on branches, disappeared without a trace. The current that day was indeed dangerous. Spring floods had raised the water level almost 4 feet above normal, and the current was literally tearing away at the banks, dragging logs, debris, and rocks with it. The official version was that it was an accident, a drowning, and that the body had been carried downstream. But the further the investigation went, the more questions remained. Several details did not fit the standard picture. The location of the fall. Friends claimed that Brandon simply walked to the edge of the bridge and suddenly fell. But according to rescuers, the railing there is high enough that an accidental fall without effort seems unlikely. No splashes or screams. One of those present noted that he did not hear Brandon scream, struggle, or call for help. There was just a dull sound, as if a body had entered the water, and then silence. That night, several people took stories and photos for social media. The last frame showed Brandon standing at the railing, talking and laughing. The next video was taken after he disappeared with panic and screams. The interval was less than a minute. All the items he could have been wearing, a belt, boots, a buckle, waterproof socks, should have floated to the surface, at least partially, but nothing was found. This is especially strange given the intensive search with echo sounders and nets during the first day. A search dog brought to the shore on the third day picked up a scent on the bridge. It followed the railing, stopped at the point where Brandon allegedly fell, and then headed toward the woods in the opposite direction of the current. The trail ended 900 feet away in a dry, mossy ravine. Despite all efforts, the search was called off after 2 weeks. The body never surfaced. His parents were told that Brandon was officially considered drowned, probably with his body stuck under debris or carried dozens of miles down the river. But Brandon's mother, Caroline, still does not believe the accident story. "He loved to swim. He knew that river," she said in an interview with a local newspaper. "He couldn't just disappear like that as if he had never existed. Something happened. We'll never know, but someone knows the truth. His father, Gerald Fitch, emphasized that his son was in a good mood, had not quarreled with anyone, and was not upset about anything. According to friends, he did not have drugs or alcohol in his system. No tests were conducted, but witnesses did not see any bottles or suspicious behavior. Brandon was recognizable by several large tattoos, the initials KV on his wrist, a large owl on his shoulder, and a Bible quote, "I can do all things through him who gives me strength," 4:13, on his left forearm. It was these distinguishing features that gave his parents hope that if the body surfaced, it would be easy to identify. But time passed and the body was never found. Not in Yellowstone, not in the lakes downstream, not in the area around the dam where the body could have been trapped. Rumors began to circulate among the residents of River Point. Some claimed that Brandon could have been involved in a scam, and that his fall from the bridge was the result of a fight. But his friends who were there all said that nothing like that had happened. There were 4 of them, the evening had been quiet, and everyone was having fun. Others suggested that Brandon might have jumped himself, but his loved ones insist that there had been no hint of depression in his behavior, conversations, or messages in recent weeks. Others pointed to a rare but well-known feature of the Yellowstone River. In some seasons, it forms underwater whirlpools that can pull a body under and hold it there for a long time. However, even in such cases, the body usually floats to the surface after a few months. Years have passed since Brandon's disappearance, and nothing has been found. More than 6 years have passed. Brandon's family still lives in the same house. His room remains untouched. Every year on June 16th, his mother goes to the shore with a white balloon and releases it into the sky in the hope that one day she will receive an answer. The official case is closed. The verdict is drowning, body not found. But the story of Brandon Fitch remains one of those cases where a simple explanation doesn't seem to hold up to the facts. Disappearing on a clear summer morning, in front of friends in rough but not impossible conditions, without a trace. This is a case that challenges the boundaries of the ordinary and the logical. There are places where the compass of logic stops working, where experienced people make rookie mistakes and the instinct for self-preservation evaporates like morning fog. The Custer-Gallatin National Forest in Montana is one such place. In June 2017, it swallowed Mike Peterson. Officially, his death was an accident, but the facts left behind on the banks of an icy creek tell a different story, a story that makes no sense. Mike Peterson was no casual tourist, a resident of Bismarck, North Dakota. He was an experienced hiker familiar with the area. This is a key detail that turns the tragedy into a mystery. He knew these trails, he knew their dangers. On June 4th, 2017, he set out on a solo hike with everything he needed to survive. His girlfriend, Bonnie Sanger, later remembered him as someone who died in a hiking accident. But what actually happened goes beyond a simple accident. He entered the wild terrain of Lee Metcalf via the West Fork Beaver Creek Trail, #222. This is not a leisurely hiking route. It is a rugged alpine trail known for its dangers. Narrow sections on crumbling cliffs, and most importantly, numerous stream crossings that turn into raging, icy torrents in early summer. That year, the snowpack was significant, and meltwater made the streams particularly dangerous. Peterson, being experienced, knew this. He was prepared for the difficulties, but he was not prepared for what awaited him. When Peterson did not return, the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office launched a large-scale search. 2 days later, on the morning of June 6th, his body was found in the icy water about a quarter of a mile south of the confluence of Beaver Creek and West Fork Creek. The coroner's official verdict was simple: accidental drowning, case closed. But the scene that rescuers discovered screamed that something wasn't right. His belongings were lying on the bank of the creek, near the spot where he had entered the water. He had taken off his backpack and vest. But that wasn't the strangest thing. Next to his backpack lay his main means of defense in grizzly country: pepper spray and his personal firearm. This action defied all logic. Why would an experienced man, knowing he was in bear country, voluntarily disarm himself? If he was going to cross a dangerous stream, why leave all his equipment on the bank? Without it, he would have frozen to death on the other side, even if he had made it across. If he fell accidentally, why were his belongings neatly removed and set aside? This is the central, inexplicable anomaly of the case. It does not look like panic. It does not look like an accident. It looks like a deliberate but completely irrational decision. It is as if, in the last minutes of his life, Mike Peterson was obeying some other alien logic. The hypothesis of hypothermia causing confusion could explain why he took off his vest. This is a known phenomenon called paradoxical undressing, but it doesn't explain why he so methodically put away his weapon. This action requires a clarity of mind that a freezing person simply does not have. To understand the scale of the strangeness, you need to look at the bigger picture. The greater Yellowstone ecosystem is a well-known cluster of unexplained disappearances, a phenomenon studied by Missing 411. Peterson's case was not the only one during that period. Just one day after he disappeared, on June 7th, another tourist, 53-year-old Jeff Murphy from Illinois, disappeared in the same region. His body was found on June 9th. He had fallen off a 500-foot cliff. 2 experienced tourists died in the same ecosystem within a week. It later emerged that Murphy had been searching for the so-called Fenn's treasure, a hoard of cash hidden in the Rocky Mountains, which had attracted many people obsessed with the risky idea to the region. There is no evidence that Peterson was also searching for treasure, but it creates a backdrop of high strangeness for the events of that time. There were people in the woods driven by unusual, almost insane goals. The Mike Peterson case is not a story about how a man drowned. It is a story about why he did it. Why did he abandon his experience, his equipment, and his survival instincts? Why did an experienced hiker voluntarily disarm himself in the heart of grizzly country? What was his plan if he left all his gear on the shore? Was it the result of a sudden, inexplicable mental breakdown? Or did he encounter something on the shore that caused him to act against all logic? The official report is closed, but for those who look at the facts, the story is far from over. It remains an open wound, a set of incompatible data. Wild nature took Mike Peterson's life, but with it, it took the answers, leaving behind only a chilling silence and one simple, disturbing truth. Sometimes people in the wilderness do things that defy explanation. On August 8, 2021, an ordinary summer day in Montana turned into a tragedy. Randall Scott Crawford, a 42-year-old resident of Park City, went rafting on the Yellowstone River with friends. No one could have imagined that a simple attempt to secure the raft in the water would lead to his death. The incident occurred near the Bratton fishing area, a popular spot among tourists and local fishermen. According to the incident report, Randall was trying to keep the raft close to the shore when he lost his balance and fell into the water. He was not strapped to the raft and was not wearing a life jacket, which played a key role in the accident. The strong current immediately swept the man away and carried him down the river. Witnesses immediately reported the incident to the rescue service, but the chances of a quick rescue were minimal. At the time of the accident, the current in Yellowstone was particularly strong, and the water was murky due to recent heavy rains. This made the search team's work much more difficult. Sheriff's units from Sweetgrass, Gallatin, Stillwater, and Yellowstone counties quickly responded to the scene. Helicopters, drones, watercraft, and volunteers, including Randall's friends and family members, also participated in the operation. The Sweetgrass County Sheriff noted that weather conditions, in particular strong winds and poor visibility from the air, prevented the full use of aerial resources. The search area stretched nearly 7 miles downstream from Bratton to the town of Reed Point. The river in this area is winding, with numerous islands, submerged trees, and debris, creating many secluded areas where a body could become trapped or remain unnoticed. The first few days yielded no results. The Crawford family remained at the site, watching the rescue efforts and participating in the search. Each evening ended with desperate hope. Maybe he's still hanging on somewhere, clinging to a log, waiting. Unfortunately, 5 days later, on August 13, 2021, Randall Crawford's body was found near Indian Fort Camp, about 4 miles downstream from where he disappeared. Searchers from Yellowstone County confirmed the identity of the deceased. Crawford's death was ruled an accident due to the lack of safety equipment and the fast-moving current. He became another victim of the treacherous and deceptively beautiful Yellowstone River. Randall's friends remember him as a caring, energetic, and very kind person. He often spent time in nature, loved the river, and knew its peculiarities. But on that day, a simple mistake, not wearing a life jacket and attempting to control the raft by hand, proved fatal. After the incident, local authorities once again reminded the public of the importance of using personal safety equipment when participating in any water-based activities. Even experienced people familiar with the conditions are not immune to the unpredictability of the river. According to rescuers, within the first 30 seconds after the fall, Randall's body could have been pulled underwater and thrown dozens of feet from the shore. The man's family thanked all the services and volunteers for their participation in the search and expressed their hope that Randall's tragedy would serve as a reminder to others of the importance of caution, preparation, and respect for the elements. Nature doesn't always kill. Sometimes it just takes, without a trace, without explanation. And the more we try to understand these disappearances, the clearer it becomes that some questions are better left unanswered. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to ensure you don't miss any new stories. Let us know in the comments, which case did you find most inexplicable? We look forward to seeing you in the next video. Please be careful, especially where the silence seems too deep.